I
There is
found
a
the
moment,
receipts.
and most people who have
So
lived
this is
through
what
it will
Kate
tell you
has
it
been
comes without
doing.
warning. When your entire life splits into two halves, the half before you knew, and the half after, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you time to prepare. It arrives quietly the way most devastating things do. On an ordinary afternoon, in an ordinary room, with a piece of paper that should have meant nothing, a receipt, folded twice, tucked into the inner pocket of a jacket hanging over a laundry basket. That was the moment it happened for Williams, a 32-year-old man from Columbus, Ohio, who had spent nearly a decade building what he believed was a good life, a stable life, the kind of life most men his age quietly hope for and rarely talk about out loud. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was just a man who showed up every single day, for his job, for his home, for his wife. And on one Saturday morning in February, while doing laundry, he reached into a jacket pocket and pulled out a receipt from a hotel 3 hours away. A hotel his wife had never mentioned, on a night she said she was visiting her sister. And here is what makes Williams's story different from the thousands of stories just like it that play out in courtrooms and kitchen tables and attorneys' offices across this country every single year. Williams did not scream. He did not confront her in a rage. He did not call a lawyer that night or throw her clothes onto the front lawn. What Williams did, in the quiet, hollow hours after his wife came home and finally told him the truth, was open his laptop, log into their bank account, and cancel the automatic mortgage payment. 3 clicks. That was it. 3 clicks that he believed in that moment were an act of power, of refusal, of a man drawing a line and saying, I will not keep paying for something that was never what I thought it was. But what Williams did not know, what nobody told him, and what would cost him the next 2 years of his life, was that those 3 clicks were about to create a legal and financial catastrophe that the betrayal itself never could have caused on its own. This is his story. And before we go any further, before we go deeper into what happened to Williams, into the receipts, into the 18 months of lies, and into the courtroom where everything finally came apart and came back together at the same time, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because what happened next in Williams's life is something that every man who has ever owned a home, shared a bank account, or trusted another person completely needs to hear. Do you understand what Williams lost? You have to first understand what he had. And more than that, you have to understand what he believed he had, because in this story, as in so many stories like it, the gap between those two things is where everything falls apart. Williams grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the east side of Columbus. His father worked at a parts manufacturing plant for 30 years. His mother was a school cafeteria supervisor. They were not people who talked about feelings or dreams or what they wanted from life in any abstract sense. They worked. They paid their bills. They stayed. That was the template Williams had. That was the blueprint he carried into adulthood and into his marriage, and into every mortgage payment he made without a second thought. He met his wife Kate at a mutual friend's cookout in the summer of 2014. She was 29. He was 30. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, confident, well-dressed, good at reading people. He was a logistics coordinator for a regional freight company, methodical, dependable, not flashy, but solid in the way that people often don't appreciate until it's gone. They dated for 2 years. Got married in 2016 at a small ceremony outside of Columbus. 60 people. Nothing extravagant. Williams's younger brother was his best man. Kate's college roommate was her maid of honor. By all accounts, it was a good day. By all accounts, for a long time after, it was a good marriage. In 2018, they bought the house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a 2-car garage on a quiet street in a suburb just outside Columbus. They paid $340,000 for it. They split the down payment from their savings, Williams contributing slightly more because he had been saving longer and because that was simply the kind of man he was. He paid his share. He always paid his share. For the next several years, they settled into the rhythms of a life that felt, from the outside, exactly like what it was supposed to look like. Kate's career advanced. She started traveling more for work, sales conferences, regional meetings, product launches. Williams kept his steady hours. He coached youth baseball on weekends for 3 seasons. He mowed his own lawn. He fixed things around the house rather than calling someone. He was, in every measurable way, the man he had always promised himself he would be. And for a long time that felt like enough. But somewhere around 2019 something changed. Williams told people later, friends, his attorney, eventually anyone who asked, that he could not point to a single day when the shift happened. It was more like a slow change in temperature. The kind you don't notice until you realize you've been cold for a long time without acknowledging it. Kate started traveling more frequently. Not dramatically more, but more. A conference in Nashville. A team retreat in Atlanta. A training event in Chicago. She was good at her job and her company rewarded that. Williams had no reason to question any of it. He was proud of her, in fact. He told his coworkers she was being fast-tracked into regional management. He believed that. He had no reason not to. But the distance was not just geographic. Kate came home different after these trips. Quieter. More distracted. She started keeping her phone face down on tables. She started taking calls in the car rather than in the house. She started going to bed earlier or staying up later. It seemed to vary. And when Williams would reach for her hand or sit beside her on the couch the way they always had, there was a new kind of stillness in her that he couldn't name. Not coldness exactly, but absence. The feeling of someone being physically present and emotionally somewhere else entirely. He told himself it was stress. He told himself it was the demands of her job. He told himself that marriages go through seasons and this was simply a winter. Longer than usual, but winters always end.
That's so funny.
He was wrong.
I know,
What he
right?
did not know, and would not know for another
Exactly.
year and a half, was that Kate had been involved with a man named Greg Talbot, a colleague from her company's regional office in Cincinnati, since the spring of 2019. Greg Talbot was 38 years old, divorced, and had been on Kate's sales team during a national conference in Phoenix where, by all later accounts, the two of them discovered they had more in common than quarterly targets and performance metrics. The relationship had begun slowly, the way these things apparently do, with texts that were easy to explain away and lunches that were technically professional and phone calls that ran long after business hours. And then it became something else entirely. And then it went on for 18 months while Williams mowed his lawn and coached youth baseball and paid his mortgage and had absolutely no idea. February 14, 2021. Valentine's Day. Williams will tell you later that the date is not lost on him. He was home alone. Kate had been away for what she described as a regional kickoff meeting. A 2-day event in Cincinnati, she said, that had been on the calendar for weeks. Williams had no reason to doubt it. He had never had a reason to doubt it. He spent Valentine's Day doing the things he always did on weekends. Fixing a leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom, watching college basketball, doing a load of laundry. And when he picked up Kate's work jacket from the chair beside the laundry basket, the charcoal gray blazer she always wore to professional events, he felt the weight of something in the inner pocket and reached in without thinking. There were 2 receipts, folded neatly, from the Marriott Renaissance Hotel in downtown Cincinnati, dated that same weekend. The charge was for a king suite, 2 nights. And at the bottom of the second receipt, in small print, was a charge for room service. Dinner for 2. Filet mignon. A bottle of wine. Chocolate lava cake. He stood in the laundry room for a very long time. He didn't call her right away. He sat down on the edge of the bed in their room, and he stayed there for the better part of an hour. He told a friend later that the worst part was not the anger, which he expected, but the clarity. Everything suddenly made sense. Every late night. Every face-down phone. Every trip that ran a day longer than planned. Every moment of distance he had explained away with patience and loyalty, and a commitment to giving his wife the benefit of every doubt. It all snapped into focus at once, and the focus was devastating. He called his brother that afternoon. His brother told him to stay calm, and not to do anything until he had all the facts. Williams agreed. He waited. When Kate came home that evening, carrying her suitcase and her laptop bag in the easy confidence of someone who had no idea the ground had shifted beneath them, Williams put the 2 receipts on the kitchen counter, sat down across from her and said 4 words. "Tell me the truth." And she did. Kate did not deny it. Williams told people later that he was almost surprised by that, by how quickly and completely she stopped pretending. She sat down. She was quiet for a moment. And then she told him about Greg Talbot. about how it had started, about how long it had been going on, about the conference in Phoenix, the texts, the calls, the hotel rooms, the 18 months of meetings in cities that were close enough to reach by car and far enough away that no one from their real life would see them. She told him everything, or at least everything she said was everything, which is a distinction that would matter later in court. She did not cry, at least not at first. She was composed in the way people sometimes are when they have been carrying a secret for so long that its release feels more like relief than reckoning. Williams sat across the table from her and listened. He asked a few questions. She answered them. And when she was done, she said she was going to go stay with her sister for a few days and give him some space to process. She packed a bag. She left. And Williams, 32 years old, sat alone in the house he had worked for and paid for and maintained, and tried to figure out what happened next. What happened next was the laptop. It was late, after midnight. He had not eaten. He had not called anyone. He had sat in silence in that house for hours, moving between rooms that now felt like museum exhibits of a life he had misunderstood. He opened his laptop at the kitchen table, logged into their joint bank account, found the automatic mortgage payment, $3,040, scheduled to draft on the 1st of the month, 9 days away, and he canceled it. He told a close friend later, "I didn't think about what it meant legally. I didn't think about credit or consequences or what the bank would do. I just thought, this is not my home anymore. Not in the way I thought it was. And I am done paying for things that are not what I thought they were." Felt in that moment like the one thing he could control, the one decision that was entirely his. He closed the laptop, went to bed, and did not sleep. What Williams did not fully understand, what many people do not understand until it is too late, is that a joint mortgage does not care about your pain. It does not care about hotel receipts or broken vows or 18 months of lies. A mortgage is a contract. And when both of your names are on that contract, both of you are equally responsible for it regardless of what is happening inside the marriage, inside the house, or inside your chest at midnight when you feel like the floor has fallen out from under your life. The bank does not make exceptions for betrayal. The credit bureau does not issue forgiveness for grief. And Williams was about to learn this in the most expensive way possible. Within 30 days of the missed payment, the mortgage servicer sent a late notice to the house. Williams, who was couch surfing at his friend Marcus's apartment by then, never saw it. Within 60 days, a second notice went out. By the third month, Kate, who had moved back into the house after Williams left, had made one partial payment on her own, but it wasn't enough to bring the account current. By month 4, they were $7,200 in arrears. And the bank sent a formal notice of default. Williams's attorney, a family law specialist named Patricia Holloway who had been practicing in Columbus for 19 years, was direct with him in a way that he described as both brutal and necessary. She told him, "Williams, I understand why you did it. I understand the impulse completely. But you have just handed Kate's attorney a weapon. Because until this divorce is finalized and these assets are legally divided, that house belongs to both of you. Every missed payment damages both of your credit scores equally. And right now, you are the one who canceled the autopay. That is documented. That is in the bank records. And a judge will see it." Patricia Holloway was not wrong. Williams's credit score, which had been a 740 when the marriage began unraveling, dropped to 588 over the following 6 months. The possibility of buying Kate out of the house, which had been his original hope, his plan to keep the home he had poured his savings and his weekends and his sense of self into, was now essentially gone. No lender would refinance him at a competitive rate with a credit score that had fallen that far, that fast. The house that had been his anchor became, instead, the weight that was pulling him under. And then Patricia Holloway found something. During the discovery phase of the divorce proceedings, the part of the legal process where both sides are required to disclose financial records, a document came to light that changed the entire shape of the case. Kate and Williams had, several years earlier, opened a home equity line of credit against the house. It was a standard arrangement, a revolving credit line secured against the equity they had built up, meant for home improvements and emergencies. They had used it once years ago to replace the roof. After that, Williams had largely forgotten it existed. Kate had not. Over the course of 18 months, the same 18 months she had been seeing Greg Talbot, Kate had been drawing from the home equity line of credit. Hotels, flights, restaurant dinners, weekend trips. One charge that Patricia Holloway identified as a piece of jewelry from a store in Cincinnati. The total, when her paralegal added it all up and laid it out in a spreadsheet that would eventually be submitted as a court exhibit, came to $23,418. Nearly $23,500 of marital equity, quietly drained from the home they had built together, to fund a life Kate was living without him. In divorce law there is a term for this. It is called dissipation of marital assets. It refers to situations where one spouse wastes or misuses shared marital property, particularly for the benefit of an extramarital relationship, in a way that diminishes the estate available for equitable distribution. It is, in plain language, financial betrayal layered on top of personal betrayal. And in Ohio, as in most states, it carries real legal weight. When Patricia Holloway presented this evidence to the court, the judge took it seriously. Kate's attorney attempted to argue that the charges were ambiguous, that not every expense could be definitively linked to the relationship with Greg Talbot. The judge was not persuaded. The timing, the locations, the pattern, it was, in the judge's own words during proceedings, consistent with the dissipation claim. Kate was ordered to absorb a significantly larger portion of the mortgage debt in the final settlement. The house was listed for sale. It sold for $312,000, less than they had originally paid for it, and significantly less than it might have fetched if the missed payments and the legal delays had not dragged the process out for nearly 2 years. After fees, after the arrearage, after legal costs on both sides, Williams walked away from the sale of his home with a check for just over $41,000. It was not nothing, but it was not what it should have been. It was not what it would have been if the equity line had never been touched, if the mortgage had never been missed, if the process had moved faster and cleaner, and without the additional damage that his 3-click decision at midnight had introduced into an already devastating situation. He did not get what he deserved. He got what the law could give him, which are two very different things, and which is a lesson that no one really understands until they are sitting in a conference room watching an attorney divide a life into line items on a settlement sheet. Williams is 35 years old now. He rents a 2-bedroom apartment in the same city where he built the life he lost. His credit score has recovered, slowly over several years, with discipline and patience that would have felt impossible to him on that February night when he sat at the kitchen table and canceled the payment. He drives the same truck. He still watches college basketball on weekends. He does not coach youth baseball anymore, though people who know him say he has talked about starting again. He is not a broken man. That is important to say. He is changed in the way that people who have been through something genuinely hard are always changed, but he is not destroyed. He is clear-eyed in a way he was not before. He told someone close to him, not long after everything was settled, the receipt was the truth. I needed the truth, even though it hurt more than anything I had ever felt. What I did not need was to let that pain make my financial decisions, because the pain heals. Eventually. But the credit score, the missed payments, the legal mess I created for myself, that took 2 years to clean up. 2 years of my life that the betrayal did not cost me, that I cost myself. If you are ever in that position, and I hope you never are, get an attorney before you do anything else. Before you cancel a payment. Before you move out. Before you make any decision that involves money or property or anything that has both of your names on it. Grief is not a strategy. And the bank will never care how badly you were hurt. Williams's story is not unique. Across this country, in cities and suburbs and small towns from Ohio to California, variations of this story are playing out right now. In kitchens and courtrooms and attorneys' offices and the quiet rooms of houses that are going up for sale for reasons that have nothing to do with the housing market. A receipt found in a jacket pocket. A credit card statement reviewed on a sleepless night. A text message left visible on a counter by accident or carelessness, or the unconscious exhaustion of maintaining a lie for longer than any person can sustain without eventually making a mistake. The discovery is always different. The grief is always the same. And the decisions made in that grief, the financial ones, the legal ones, the ones that feel like power in the moment and cost you everything in the months that follow, those decisions are where so many people lose far more than the marriage itself. Williams lost a house. He nearly lost his financial future. He lost 2 years fighting consequences he had, in part, created for himself. But he found something on the other side of all of it that he says he would not trade: clarity. The absolute, unambiguous knowledge of who he was and what he was worth, independent of anyone else's choices or lies or hotel receipts. And that, he says, is something no settlement sheet can divide. So I want to ask you, and I genuinely mean this, what would you have done? If you had found those receipts, if you had heard that confession, if you had sat alone in that house
so
at midnight
funny.
with a laptop
I know,
open and
right?
every reason in the world to feel like nothing was
Exactly.
yours anymore, what would you have done? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and this conversation matters. And if you think Williams's story ends where most of these stories end, with a settlement and a sold house and a man picking up the pieces, stay subscribed. Because next week, we are telling the story of a woman who found something far worse than a hotel receipt. And what she did with it, what her attorney later called the most calculated and legally precise response to betrayal he had seen in 20 years of family law, is something you will not see coming. Subscribe now. You do not want to miss that one.